Let's continue our discussion. We'd be remiss if we didn't thank our good friend Roger Stone, who joined us earlier tonight from Miami. But now, via telephone from the West Coast, Michael Reagan joins us, and Dick Morris remains with us via Skype from Connecticut. Michael Reagan, earlier today and earlier this evening on Newsmax Prime, you were quite vociferous in your concern about Donald Trump trying to take on the mantle of President Ronald Reagan. Tonight, there was Trump at a separate event. Did it hurt him to be at Drake University instead of in that GOP debate elsewhere in Des Moines?
I got to tell you, I think this is one of the best debates they've had because Trump was not in the room with his antics and what have you. So every one of the candidates was able to get their point across. Now, good debate, if you will. So do I think it's going to hurt Trump? I think ultimately it will hurt Trump that he didn't show up at the final debate before everybody caucuses on Monday.
And earlier on Newsmax Prime, Michael Reagan, you recounted your advice to your own dad who missed that final Iowa debate. Dick Morris, we know that Iowans like to make a personal connection with the candidates. We also know that a caucus is very different from a primary. A caucus, you go out on a Monday night. It's a drawn-out situation where you listen to speeches and then vote via paper ballot. But it's interesting that both you and Michael are insistent that you think Trump was in error tonight.
Yeah, I think it was a big mistake. There's an important point to understand about the various polls of the Iowa caucus. They all differ on the projected turnout level. And if you'll let me be a little wonkish for a second, there are about 100,000, 150,000 people that vote in an Iowa caucus. Iowa has a population of about 5 or 6 million. So you have to telephone 60 people to get a person who has been to a caucus before. And you end up getting a lot of people who aren't going to vote. If you look at the models in the Monmouth poll and the other polls that show Trump 5 and 6 points ahead of Cruz, they would suggest a turnout of 250,000 in the caucuses. The record is 122,000 set in 2012. Since then, the Republican registration in Iowa has dropped. If the turnout is 200 or 250,000, Trump is going to win because he gets a lot of votes of first-time caucus goers. But if the turnout is more realistically 140, 150,000, Cruz is going to win by a significant amount. And I think that that's going to reconfigure this field. I would not be surprised if Trump is almost knocked out of the race after the Iowa caucuses.
If I could jump in for a second, you must remember also, Iowa does not have a great history of choosing the Republican nominee for the presidency of the United States. It is a caucus. It is not a primary. So there's a lot of people who might vote in a primary who are right now sitting in Cancun, soaking in the sun, instead of freezing to death in Des Moines, Iowa.
Well, fair enough, but let me take polite exception to what you gentlemen are saying in terms of Trump's situation, and let me explain why. Dick, earlier you referenced the very tough ads being run by Ted Cruz on Trump's prior stance on abortion, being adamantly pro-choice. The fact is tonight, rather than ducking that, I believe Trump tried to redefine the situation and redefine his role by holding a separate event that was not Trump-centric. Oh, yes, he was there with all the standard embellishments, but by concentrating on veterans, and even in a caucus state. We've been talking about the evangelical community. If veterans get energized and they think Trump is a can-do guy, maybe it won't work in Iowa. But in New Hampshire, South Carolina, I think it's something that could help the Donald.
They're never going to outdo the evangelicals in Des Moines, Iowa. Trust me, I have been there.
I understand.
And I might remind you also, I know you had Roger Stone on earlier, but remember, I'm the guy who approved the firing of Roger Stone after he came to Ronald Reagan, along with Sears and Manafort and Black, and suggested that Ronald Reagan not attend the last debate in Des Moines, Iowa back in 1980.
All right, that is worth noting.
I have
go ahead.
Because I did not see Trump at his event, and had I seen it, I might have other comments. But I believe voters know the difference between a rally and a debate. And I think that the insult of his not appearing at the debate will be significant. And voters are asking themselves, what if Putin offends him? What if Hollande or Cameron offends him? Are we going to get into a war? Is personal pique and peevishness going to dominate how American foreign policy is conducted? This is not the way a president of the United States acts. And I think Trump ran afoul of that tonight.
But it is a way for a candidate to control the agenda. And tonight, because I can tell you, having seen some of those scenes, having seen the crowd, and more importantly, having seen Donald Trump yield the floor, not only to two of the previous caucus winners, but also to a veteran who offered a very moving statement about national security and his own experience in uniform, it did not appear to be Trump-centric. It appeared to be outwardly focused.
It's always a Trump-centric. It's always a Trump show. And I got to tell you, I think the last two caucus winners who went there to give credibility to Donald Trump were absolute fools. They're going nowhere. They're not going to win another caucus at all. They shouldn't even be in the debates. And then to go and give credibility or try to give credibility to Trump, Trump had to be laughing all the way back to his plane.
All right. Well, I think candidates do what they think they need to, and we need to call again on Steve Malzberg, waiting patiently there at Newsmax, New York. I think what we have here is not so much a failure to communicate, Steve, but an honest disagreement with our two pundit friends.
Yeah, well, first of all, again, with all due respect to both gentlemen who know far more than I ever will, to Dick Morris, I mean, to say that Donald Trump could be knocked out of the race after Iowa when he's going to win South Carolina, he's going to win New Hampshire before that, and he's leading in every other state that has a poll so far, I just don't get that at all. And as far as, you know, that Donald Trump isn't presidential, whether it be on foreign policy or whatever, we've seen him in debate after debate. We've seen him in interview after interview. And he's the leader with his personality, with his bravado, with his answers. He's the leader based on who he has been. So all of a sudden now he's not presidential enough and he's going to suffer. I just don't see any of it.
Dick, you want to respond? Go ahead.
It's okay that Steve doesn't see it. I've elected 30 senators or governors, 14 presidents and prime ministers.
I said you know more than me.
And then listen to me. And I'm telling you that Trump made a big mistake by not showing up tonight. It reinforces the biggest negative on him, which is that he lacks presidential temperament and presidentiality. And you're going to see the bottom fall out of Trump's support over the next 3 days.
And I think the other thing is, you know, he might be saying what a lot of people want someone to say, but then be able to follow through with it is something completely different. We know he is not going to kick 11 million or 12 million people out of the United States of America. We know that he's not going to stop Muslims from coming into this country and visiting or living here or what have you. There's so many things that he says that, in fact, may garner him support and votes, but none of which he is going to be able to accomplish if elected to the presidency of the United States of America.
But sometimes it is.
But you know what, Michael? You know what, Michael? He could do something. He could fix the immigration system, which the Republicans in power now have done nothing. They've let Obama run roughshod over the whole system and break the law. And on Muslims, we have a system that does not vet terrorists. He could fix that too. So even if he doesn't accomplish everything he says, people have confidence that he will get something done, which is a hell of a lot more than the phony Republicans in power right now are doing or trying to do.
It's really interesting. Everybody blames the Republicans here, and they put up votes. They get vetoed by the President of the United States of America. They don't get through the Senate. Yet how many bills were stopped by Harry Reid for how many years sitting there in the United States Senate, and the Republicans keep on getting, you know, basically what you have here is you have cable and talk radio have decided that, in fact, the next President of the United States should be somebody like a Donald Trump. If you guys had a convention, he would be your nominee.
Well, no, but it goes beyond that, and I can say
No,
this
it
is
doesn't.
well, yes, it does, Michael. And let me just explain briefly, because I've had a foot in both camps as the only person here who has actually been elected by the people, and I can tell you that I worked very hard with an Enforcement First Act that George W. Bush would not embrace. That while he signed in my presence a bill to put up a fence, in his next budget, he failed to put forward any money. And you know who had to go to the floor of the Senate and point that out? The late Robert C. Byrd of West Virginia. What Steve has touched on in terms of this immigration issue is not the manufactured anger of talk radio. It is the genuine anger that is coming from a frustration of the elites, the Chamber of Commerce, the Washington establishment, Republican leadership and Democratic leadership for failing to effectively deal with this problem. And that's why we're in the situation we're in now, Michael.
Yeah, I will tell you this. You could solve the immigration problem all day long, but you're going to find out that's not really all the problems the United States of America has. What happens with conservatives is they don't have a leader. They have to coalesce behind an enemy. And so they don't have a leader, so the enemy becomes illegal immigration. Well, what can we do? And if we can solve that problem, all the other things are going to go away. They're just not going away.
Well, can I suggest
we have a lot of problems in the United States.
And you know why?
When Mitch McConnell campaigns on kicking Harry Reid the heck out of the leadership, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, we think we're voting for a leader. We think we have hope. And then
and
the
how
minute he's elected and he gives it,
wait a minute, if you don't have to vote?
Wait a minute. Let me just finish. And gives his victory speech and says, we're not going to shut the government down. That's a surrender right off the bat. Give me a break.
And you know something? Every time the Republicans decide to shut the government down, who ends up losing the day?
They got a landslide a year after it shut down.
That is what happened in the midterm. Obviously, good friends and good people can disagree. And tonight, from the West Coast, we want to thank Michael Reagan for his viewpoint from Los Angeles, and of course from Newsmax, New York, our good friend Steve Malzberg for a very impassioned discussion. And Dick and I even got in on some of it too. We thank you very much.